Welcome, and in today's video we're going to be talking about everything you need to tattoo in 2021. So the very first thing I want to talk about, because we're going to use them right now, is gloves. It goes without saying you're going to be dealing with bodily fluids, so this is a must. Now there's several kinds of gloves you can get. I would go with a nitrile glove as it's going to work best for most. But moving on, you got your gloves, now you need a machine. So you could go the coil route, which I'm not going to suggest. If you want to know more about coils, check that out. But this is my suggestion on what I think is going to be best for somebody getting into tattooing. So I'm going to go with a pen style tattoo machine. This is made by CNC, and this would be my recommendation. I've owned this machine for a year and tattooed with it exclusively. If you want to know more about the specific machine, I'll link videos up here as we've talked about them. This is the CNC Q2, and it comes in under $200. And in a world full of a lot of tattoo machines at various different prices, I think this is a great option for somebody getting into tattooing. It's going to be great to get into it, and it's also going to serve you for quite a while after that, in my opinion. Now, to work with this machine, you're also going to need a power supply and a clip cord. This plugs into here, and this would plug into your machine. You could also use a foot pedal, but this is not my suggestion, okay? Again, these are my suggestions of what I think is going to serve you best when getting into tattooing. What I have here are a couple of options. These are wireless power supplies, and these are just a couple of options, ranging anywhere from $50 all the way up to $500, depending on how many batteries you get, who it's made by, and whatnot. So while I'm not going to suggest you spend a ton of money on them right out the gate, that is an option. I would say go with something like this. I'll have links in the description if you want to check this particular one out, if I can still find it. But when I bought this, it was $35. It has gone up, but there are plenty of different versions just like it. And all you're going to do with this, plug it on, push the button, and you're running wirelessly, nothing attached to it. You adjust your voltage here. So again, this just makes the package a very simple package. It makes movability and everything just so much better, and it's a lot nicer when you're getting into tattooing. So this is it with the other battery supply on there. Definitely suggest going wireless. It just works great for me. I'm sure there are plenty of artists out there who would disagree, but for me, in my experience and what I've done, I just prefer it, and I'm never going back to a wire. So you have your gloves, you have your machine, you have a power supply for your machine. Now you have to keep all that stuff sanitary. So for that purpose, I use this stuff right here. Now there are alternatives to this as well, but again, this is what I use. If you're running a clip cord, you're gonna need a sleeve to cover the clip cord so you're not getting a bunch of stuff all over your clip cord and then rubbing that on yourself or another client. So Clipcord sleeves are very important. Now, if you're running that wireless setup that I talked about, the clip cord can work great too to help wrap a portion of the body and the battery. If you want to check that stuff out, I'll have videos linked up top and below in the description. Next up, we have barrier film. And this is going to work great for anything that you're doing. If you're going to touch something during the tattoo, maybe your light or whatnot, you can wrap this around the area you're grabbing so that you're not cross-contaminating later. You can rip this off and dispose of it. Also, it works great for your machine. The Clipcord sleeve covers the bottom. This can cover any portion that is exposed. You can just wrap that around that area, and now it's not. And it sticks to itself, it clings to itself, and it comes off really easily. Guess I lied. Lastly, we have sports wrap. What I use this for is to wrap the end of my machine down here on the grip. What that does for me is it gives me a little bit more cushion when tattooing. It allows a little more comfort, and of course you can peel it right off and throw it away when you're done. So now we got the gloves, the machine, the power supply, what you need to wrap that bad Larry up. Next thing we're gonna talk about, some needles. Obviously, you can't tattoo without them. So for my suggestion when it comes to needles, if you're using a machine like I suggested before, that is a cartridge machine, they take cartridge needles, which are these right here. The bar inside rotates, pushing this in and out, and that's pretty much how a cartridge works. Plugs into the front of your machine, it clicks in, turns, and now it's in there. To get it back out, just rotate it right back out. Now when it comes to needles, there are a lot of brands out there, and I've used quite a few different brands, but I wanted to find something that I know you guys can get your hands on. So I tried these needles out from So Long right here, and I've been using them pretty regularly, and I'm starting to really like them. They're a tight needle, solid needle. They have them in bug pins, standard, so it meets my needs, and I know you guys can get your hands on them. So for needles, this would be my suggestion when getting started. And when it comes to buying needles, you have both liners and shaders. I would suggest getting a little bit of each. Maybe start with a 5-round liner and maybe a 7 Magnum and 11 Magnum. Start with something, give it a go, and move from there. Okay, we're moving right along. We got needles, machines, power supplies, gloves. We're wrapping our machine up. Next, we're gonna need some ink. What I use for ink and what I would suggest to you is dynamic. Now, I use dynamic for black. I also use it for my gray wash. I break it down and I add some distilled water, and that's what I use for gray wash. I use it for lining, for black, for gray wash. It's just a really good all around black ink, very versatile. So I would absolutely recommend that. When it comes to colors, like all this stuff, extremely subjective and opinionated. Now these are just my opinions again, but I would go with Eternal. There are tons and tons of colors. These are just a few I grabbed off my shelf. You can get anything from skin flesh to zombie colors. They have it all. So definitely a good option and a wide variety. So these are my recommendations for ink: Eternal for color and dynamic for black. Again, that's just me. All right, so we have our ink, but we need somewhere to put our ink. So next up we have our ink caps. Now you have large ink caps and they come in a variety of sizes. Check them out, see what might work for you. But I just want to show you that you have options. You have a large ink cap, what I would call a medium ink cap, and a very small ink cap. These very small ink caps, I use those a lot for color. If I'm just going to be using a little bit of color in a needle that's not super large. Next up, we have a medium sized ink caps. I also use these caps for color. If I'm doing a piece that requires a bit more color, I'll fill them up a bit more. And there's a lot more room in here to fit a needle. And the large caps I will also use if I'm doing a lot of color, but if you know my work, I don't do a lot of color. So I use these for my black and gray. I'm very specific about them because I have a system and it's large enough to fit any mag in that hole within reason. But just to show you how that would work, again, plenty of room, and in this case, plenty of room. But if I were using a larger mag, then obviously it's not gonna fit in this one every time. Maybe, definitely gonna fit in there, and that's why I use these ink caps the most. Do you use a little bit more ink? Possibly, but that's the give and take. Next up is going to be ointment. Now, there are plenty of options. You have A&D, there's Vaseline as well. There's different products made by different companies that do the same thing as well. But nonetheless, you're gonna need some sort of a ointment to help with the skin while you're tattooing. Oftentimes you'll see it on the back of an artist's glove. It's just for easy access while you're tattooing. A little bit down, tattoo, wipe a little bit down. So nonetheless, these are just a couple of the many options. Next, you're gonna need something to put green soap in and a little bit of water, which you'll use during tattooing. So you're gonna need something like this. This currently has the green soap in it, and I have another one that I use water for. Next, you're gonna wanna wrap this up, and you can use something as simple as a plastic sandwich bag, pop it over, and slide it down. But they also make products as well for this. Who knew? Surprise, surprise. There's plenty of other companies making stuff, but I'm gonna show you how this works. Pop one of these out. Again, it's kind of like a sandwich bag, it just fits your bottle. We're gonna slide that right over the top like that. And then here at the end, we pull that and pop it through. You can put another one underneath of this and bring it up to keep it perfectly safe. But nonetheless, that's a necessity because your hands are touching it all the time and we don't want no cross-contamination. So that brings us to our next thing. So you have the bottles, well, you need something to put in them. So here we go. First off, we have distilled water. Now, you're gonna want distilled water because if you're mixing that with your black to give you any sort of a gray wash, you're gonna wanna be using distilled water. There are other products too, but I'm keeping it simple, distilled water. Also, when you're rinsing your needles in between things, distilled water in a cup, rinse it out. Also, when we get to green soap, it's not the only product, there's also blue soap. But they both work pretty similarly. And if you buy it like this, you're gonna have to dilute it. It's a necessity in my opinion, because when you're done with a tattoo, it cleans up all the ink and gets everything out of the way. There are other uses for it during the tattoo for the same reasons. Nonetheless, it's a good soap to use. and it's in a concentration, so you will water this down as you use it, so this will last you a good little while. We're moving along well, but we need something to get the picture onto the skin, and that's where stencil paper comes in. And in my choice when it comes to stencil paper is Spirit. I've had no problems with them. It's a solid go-to stencil paper. So you're gonna need something like this in order to take your drawing and turn it into a stencil that you can place on the skin. So that brings us to our next thing we need, Stencil Stuff. There are, again, other products out there. You could even use a deodorant speed stick. Of course, you do want to be a little careful using a speed stick because it's not quite as hygienic. You want to make sure you're wiping this onto a paper towel, then wiping onto the person, not straight from here onto the person, because obviously that's going to create cross-contamination. So that's why I would suggest a product like this, and Stencil Stuff is my go-to when it comes to putting stencils on the skin. It lasts quite well. Again, had no problems, so that's gonna come up as my suggestion for you to get the stencil on the skin. Another important thing to have is some sort of a plastic film. You can use something like this where you can roll it, whatever, but you might need to wrap things up, like your armrest, maybe your chair. You can use larger rolls, smaller rolls, it's totally up to you, but you want some sort of barrier there so that the ink and body fluids don't get all over your equipment. So you're being as clean as you can, you have what you need, but at the end of the day, you are gonna have to clean things. So when it comes to that, cleaning your machine and furniture and whatnot, I use CaviCide. Now again, these come in different sizes and different configurations. Spray bottle, you have a large bottle, then there are also wipes. There are other brands who make things like this too to clean your equipment, your machine, and various products that might have some sort of bodily fluid on them. But what I will suggest, if you can get the wipes, the CaviCide wipes, in my opinion, are the best to use. Also, there is all the equipment we use, the chairs, the armrests, all that stuff. Is that a must? I don't think so. I think the stuff I'm talking about here is a must-have, and you can work your way to getting other things. So my goal here is, if you're out there and you're trying to figure out what do I need to tattoo, what am I doing, what do I actually have to get to make this happen? Do I use a coil, do I use a rotary, do I do this, do I do that? Now, I hope that this video helps you understand what you might need to get into it, and as you develop, you're gonna adjust. You might find that something else works better for you, then do that. You might get other equipment, whatever. Don't kill yourself all at once. Get what you need to get started and go from there. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.